Hey y'all, Will here, otherwise Zelray, and today in Once Human we're going over the patch notes that release and go live early August 15th. There's going to be a ton of things to go over, so just taking a look at the topics real quick. We have ranching and soon to be animal husbandry. They are revamping the fishing system. In PvP Evolution's Call scenario, they're adding Sproutlet Conquest as a new activity. We have the Ancient Ones Trial, which seems to be a PvE or PvP scenario addition. We have mod conversions coming into the game. We have the much awaited controller support. We also now have cross-character paid content being available. They're going to be adding server invitations. There's a lot of more season info that they already covered a couple days ago, and I did as well. With that, season optimizations. They have plenty of new, really interesting shop items, one being a teddy bear type costume, and then we finally have our much awaited Ghost Rider type costume. More on that though, that's something specific that I want to talk about. Gameplay optimizations, construction optimizations, combat optimization. Okay, let's get cut to the chase. There's a lot of optimizations. Okay, deviation changes and deviant changes, aka bosses or the world deviants. We also have our first balance pass of many weapons, buffs, and one-liners that have to be tweaked in their modifiers to make it feel like a more balanced gameplay experience. On top of that, we're also going to see new weapon calibrations. This is going to be everything I'm mostly going to be going over, and if you want to switch between the different segments of this video to get to what you want to listen about, go right ahead. There's a lot here. It is going to be a long video. I'm going to be talking a lot, but we already know that. We're going to be trying to take it piece by piece and really breaking it down so people know what to expect coming up in this patch and maybe in future iterations of patches coming out. This is the 1.1 release of Once Human, so we're finally getting our first major milestone patch and update. So it's an important thing. I think they're doing a great job overall fixing, updating, and adding new content to the game. There are still some things I'd like to see, but we'll touch on that at the end of the video. Let's get into it first with ranching. A brand new animal ranching feature is now available. Capture and raise animals and build a post-apocalyptic ranch of your dreams is the headliner for this. They're going to be including deers, wolves, sheep, wild boars, bears, rabbits, and crocodiles that can be captured and brought back to your territory to be raised. As time goes on, we might see others such as the capybaras, the panthers, the cheetahs. Who knows what we'll get, but this is something that is going to bring a lot of people who are into building and general territory advancement a lot of joy in the game because it is heavily focused on combat currently. This is a way to also gather more materials. It says each animal has different habits and characteristics. You must build special housing for each type of animal and provide the appropriate food. Once an animal is tame enough, you'll be able to collect skins and or meat from them. So this is a way that you can essentially farm those animal materials that are kind of a pain in the butt to do, outside of maybe boar and deer. Now, some animals are going to be like the Nutcracker and actually be able to defend your territory from deviant invasions as well. In the future, they are, as I said earlier in my intro, adding animal husbandry. They're just calling it breeding in general to obtain rare and unique critters. I wonder if there's also going to be different morphs and skin patterns for the critters that we already have. Overall, I think this is a great system to have. It adds a new collection and thing to do for players when they're just wanting to relax and chill. Most of Once Human currently is the go, get this done, get that done, and call it a day. Having things like this allows people to be able to focus on something other than just what they're releasing week after week and allow our population in-game to stay a little bit higher and have some more fun with something that isn't just shoot this, shoot that, and loot this and loot that. On to the revamped fishing system. This is a third iteration of fishing that Once Human has released in between their betas and launch. There is a lot of feedback that they have gotten well-deserved criticism because the fishing minigame isn't necessarily as fun as it could be. It's very confusing. You can't know how to fish. Some fish just change up the way, and sometimes you just lose a fish and you have no idea why. Not only that, a big thing that I wanted to see, and they're finally adding, is that they've increased the number of fish each fish tank can hold, and they've also added a lot more rare types of fish that are new to the game. The new fishing minigame that they're adding is a battle of your stamina and the fish's energy. There is still tension, and if you reel in too hard, you have a potential of snapping the line still. If you have run the fish out of energy, you have successfully caught it. It's a little bit more straightforward, which is good. They've made it so that now small fish that you catch can now be used as bait, and I'm sure that you'll only be able to catch certain fish by using certain smaller fish as bait. That would be a great addition as well. I hope they really go that route with what they're saying here. They say that they have optimized the fish types, but really I think what they mean is they're adding new fish types, and they said that they are adding different morphs, essentially 2 different fish. So on the northern pike, we can get a blood jade variant. Sunfish have the black rose variant. We have the blue porcelain, rainbow trout, etc., etc. However, I do see 2 fish that I've never seen yet before. Maybe I'm just bad at fishing. But we have the guppy and a peacock variant, so that's 2. And then we also have the tilapia and the red giant. I have seen tilapia, I think, in some of the buffs for food items, so I probably just haven't caught that one yet now thinking of it. Finally, the fish tank optimization is each fish tank can now hold up to 8 fish depending on the size of the fish. So if you have that giant koi like I do, most likely many other fish will not be able to join that. I do wish that they add different fish tank sizes in the future, and maybe even a pond that we can place in our territory to hold more fish even than what we currently have. That would also be a very fun thing to see. Now we're going to be talking about a wilderness game mode. This is your just events essentially that spawn in the world. This one is called Sproutlet Conquest. This is exclusive to Evolution's Call. That means we won't be seeing that in the 2B Prism versus Clash or the current Mana Bus. This opens every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday at 4:20 p.m. server time. It's going to be a random settlement in either Chalk Peak, Lone Wolf Waste, or Blackheart, the 3 highest level regions we have. The game mode will last for 20 minutes. Sproutletite, being a new currency, will start spawning 5 minutes after the event starts and can be obtained through various mining methods. Metas in the event zone will be in PvP teams. During the event, the more Sproutletite that you carry, the more Sproutletite you will drop when defeated. Rewards. Metas can exchange Sproutletite for Sproutlets at a 1-to-1 conversion rate with Nisa in the camp. So we have a winner-takes-all type loot system here, where if you're carrying too many Sproutletites and you don't bring them back to base, most likely you can lose them, so you will have to be careful and defend people from other teams that are trying to take your Sproutletites. For those Destiny 2 players, this reminds me as an offshoot of what Gambit is, if you want to kind of wrap your head around it that way. The more items you carry, the more that you can lose, so you have to be careful. Another event that they are releasing is called the Ancient Ones Trial. They haven't said that this is either going to be for Mana Bus or for Evolution's Call, so we will both be able to play that depending on the server that you're on, and it shows something very interesting. Finally, we get to see the plane that has been teased through, the next PvE scenario that we're getting in October-ish, and also in a lot of the standard advertising that we have seen for Once Human during launch, before launch, etc. This is the Ancient One's Trial. People have reported seeing the Ancient One descend upon the highest mountain in Chalk Peak. The Ancient One's Trial await any meta who can climb to the top of that tall mountain. Board the Ancient One and face a trial that will test your determination and courage. Metas who earn the Ancient One's recognition shall receive lots of rewards. Call upon your most trustworthy companions and attempt the Ancient One's trial together. I'm assuming this is going to be a 4-person trial because that's what we can make in a group. It might be Hive-based and it may potentially be Warband-based, but I doubt it. I think it's going to be a 4-person trial, and I don't know if multiple people can do this at once. It'll be interesting to see how that goes. This may even be some sort of boss fight where it's instance. We don't know. I'm curious to see what rewards we get and what we unlock for doing this. It seems like a very fun, different thing that just came out of nowhere. So we'll see. The next is a surprise for me, not because of what it is, but mod conversions were teased to be coming out in scenario 2 or, after the intro novice scenario. Now it seems like they're going to be available a little bit earlier than that. Now, if you hit level 40 in the novice season, or when you enter a non-novice season, if you have not got to 40, you can use mod conversions. This function can be accessed from the upper right of the mod backpack. It has been in there and it has talked about what it can do, but now we get a little bit more information on exactly how it works. You can convert 6 unenhanced, non-upgraded legendary mods into a legendary mod with a main attribute of their choice. So this is going to allow us to kind of try to get another chance to gamble the mods that we don't want to break down into a mod that might be better. Mods obtained via conversion may contain basic suffixes, none, violent, precision, or talent. They say deviant energy, but it's talents. If 4 of the 6 mods used for the conversion contain the same suffix, the converted mod is guaranteed to have that suffix. This is assumed that the converted mod is able to have their suffix. For example, Lucky 7 cannot have the precision suffix, and Embers cannot have the frost vortex suffix. Also, that really means that you can't have violent and precision on the same mod. You have to just choose your prefix, and that prefix will allow you to have those available prefixes than the standard list of suffixes that are normal in those types of situations. Finally, it says the converted mod's attribute level depends on the attribute levels of the 6 mods used for the conversion. So this may be the way where we can get multiple purple slotted attributes into one mod instead of getting one purple slot, multiple greens, blues, whites, etc. Now we might be able to start with something with 3 purples and a blue, so we can bring it fully up to a completely leveled out legendary mod. I think this is how they want us to make the best mods in the game, and we'll see how it works. Currently it sounds a little bit confusing. I hope they make it just easier to understand so that people can really understand what they're getting themselves into and not make a mistake, because they are using so many legendary mods to make a new thing. You can create something that's utter trash if you don't understand the principles behind what it's asking you to do. Okay, on to a big thing for a lot of people. I know a ton of people who have been waiting for controller support. It is finally here, mostly. We have all our basic gameplay accessibilities finished, but it's not 100% finished. We have 4 different type of controller schemes that you can choose. Default being what's most quote-unquote suitable for most once human players. Then we have left-handed, suitable for left-handed players, which is kind of weird. I mean, there is a southpaw scheme in a lot of games, but still. We have shooter, similar to most mainstream shooter games, and action, similar to most mainstream action games. So whatever fits your own preference for controller layout, you can, depending on the games that you like to play and which games you feel have the best controller layout for general gameplay. Now, they are still optimizing and making controller support as good as they can for all the players who want it. However, it is currently unable to use the camera mode, aka just taking pictures, and anything relating to stickers on weapons and vehicles. Also, they said that playing the piano or other features that are a little bit more convoluted in general, even for keyboard users, might be just as difficult. They have stated that using a controller may cause occasional freezing, so that might be something that they're trying to work out too. This usually comes into play when you have a controller plugged in and it's not plugged in very well to your PC, and as it jostles out and back in while you're moving the controller and its cord connected to your PC, it causes issues. So maybe that's what they're mentioning, and their game hitches when new accessories are added to the PC, or it might be just trying to reinitialize the fact that a controller is now plugged in compared to beforehand it wanted to be in a keyboard and mouse type structure game mode. They do have support for controller vibration. It can be enabled or disabled. They also have support for French and German keyboards, which you can choose your keyboard layout in your settings. And they also optimize the display logic of the controls on your settings screen, so it's easier to essentially move around using a controller if you're unsure of what button to press. They wanted to add cross-character sharing for paid content much earlier on the August 1st update, but they did not make their mark. So now cross-character sharing is available. It is paid cosmetics and premium currencies, such as Christian, can be shared by all characters underneath the same account in the same region. Therefore, if you're on NA and EU, you're not going to be able to do this. If you're on the same region, you will be able to. For more information, refer to the Once Human cross-character sharing rules announcement on our official website. So they haven't really fully stated this. We're going to be getting more information on this probably on the 17th when this patch actually does release. On to something very, very cool that a lot of us need, are server invitation codes. These allow, once a server is full, to allow more people to join the server using these codes specifically. So if you wanted to play with friends and they were a little bit late, they have the chance to enter. However, you still need to be quick because there is an overall restricted cap beyond the standard server cap for these server invitation codes. These can be found on your player info screen and can be accessed in the menu. Each person can invite up to 5 friends. So for our current server issue, if a server is full and you're still wanting to play on it for a couple of weeks, you can invite your friends over to the server that you're on until it finishes up. Or when you're on a new server and it fills up too quickly, you had to be really snappy about saying, here's your invite code, just log in. I know you might be busy today, but get on, accept this code, so at least you're locked into the server and we can actually play together so we don't have to deal with the same issues that we did last season. Or server scenario season, or however you want to state that exact transition. On to info about seasons. Most of the season info in this patch I already went over a couple days ago, and there will be a card and a link in the description so that you can find that information if you'd like. I went over the general season information, signing up for a new season, what progress you get to carry over and what progress do you lose, if any, and I also went over the Eternal Land Depot. You do lose a couple things, but mainly they're things like your logs, stone, tungsten, energy links, your levels, your memetics, because you are going to re-level and gain those memetics back, things of that nature. But you do not lose your deviants, you do not lose your blueprints, your weapon or armor blueprints, you don't lose your mod progressions, you don't lose your weapon calibrations. From what I can tell, those go to Eternal Land and you might have to take them out of Eternal Land. And you also don't lose your story progress. So if you did want to go back to another season of the same story, go into the same scenario again, you can kind of quick play your way through in a way just to get to the end game content and the weekly star crumb things that you already know and get right into that type of gameplay loop. With that, you do not lose your Star Chrome, your Stellar Planura, you don't lose your Christian. Most of all your currencies that you earned outside of energy links, you actually keep completely, including Sproutlets. All those things go with you. Now, this is what I didn't cover, are the season optimizations. In the upcoming season, we are releasing a new scenario with higher difficulty. This scenario will include 2 combat environments, with each environment containing different cradle override combinations, super anomaly types, exclusive blueprints, and calibration blueprints. There are also 2 combat difficulties for this scenario, normal and hard. On hard, deviants, dungeons, and other challenges will be tougher, but also yield more rewards. You may choose whichever combat difficulty level you prefer. When the season enters its settlement phase, your personal territory and your vehicle's mobile territory will be automatically saved as house blueprints for use in the new season. So that's the new stuff. We had a novice difficulty in Manabus and Evolution's Call. I'm not sure if Manabus and Evolution's Call will have different difficulties, but for sure the Prism versus Clash will. They'll have normal and hard, not even novice. Not only that, but we have this super anomaly type, which I have no idea what that is. We have 2 different cradle override combinations. Sounds like if you're in one zone, you get one, and if you're in another, you get the other. I'm curious to see how they balance that with builds and everything else. Or maybe you can choose one or the other. Maybe there's 2 different cradle override pages that you can choose from. Also, if you do choose hard mode, which I know I will, I'm definitely doing that, you'll also get more rewards for doing hard mode. I'm really curious how far they may take this, and I'm glad that it's an option for the player to choose which they're going to do. This might break it up into multiple servers. We'll see how that all plays out. Maybe not. Maybe it's an instance thing within each server, so you keep the populations high everywhere. They also mention in there, whenever you exit a season, your house exactly how it is and all your vehicle blueprints will be saved so that you can just put them right back into play as soon as you get into the next season, which is cool, or next scenario. Okay, on to new shop items, and this is one of the things I said in the intro that I actually wanted to go over a little bit more because it's not the same as what most people are going to be used to. Now, what is the same is we have the Teddy Warrior fashion set, which is going to be a full teddy bear outfit. Yet, the thing that I actually wanted to talk about here, outside of their epic hairstyles and makeups and teddy bears, is light forged loot crates. This is the first big ticket item that we have that is going to be RNG on purchase. And I have a feeling a lot of people are going to flip their lid over this because the game was somewhat stated around not pay to win. And this isn't pay to win, it's all cosmetic. But if you really want something out of this loot crate, you're going to have to roll RNG for it. That's just the way it's going to be. Reading it directly, Lightforged loot crates are now available. Open the Lightforged loot crate to receive a guaranteed cosmetic as well as a chance to obtain Lightforged collection cosmetics. You will not receive duplicate Lightforged collection cosmetics. A Lightforged collection cosmetic is guaranteed within 30 openings. Duplicate cosmetics obtained will be converted into tokens that can be used to redeem Lightforged loot crate rewards or Siderite. I don't know what Siderite is, but you can use these tokens if you do get duplicates to obtain a potential reward if you collect enough tokens. So there is some sort of failure balancing so that you're quote-unquote pitied, which is what a lot of these companies use as a way to make sure you get a reward if you're unlucky at getting what you want. So you will get it. It just, we don't know how much time yet. This is completely RNG. It's going to bug and rustle some feathers overall within the community because this is the first thing that we're really seeing like this on such big ticket items. Now, I will say that they do look awesome. So, like, I'm excited and I want to try it a couple times, but I don't know exactly how much it will take to get some of this stuff. We have a couple of event updates as well. One is for the Wilderness Express, which starts on August 15th. It says, enjoy racing through the wilderness alone or as a team and earn points for mileage and collisions. Reach the required score to claim rewards including Star Crumb and the limited edition Fulfill the Wish Vest cosmetic. Secondly, Secure on Sight, which starts on the 22nd. During the event, defeat enemies to earn loot crates which may contain specimen cards. Collect specimen cards and fill out the field guide to earn rewards. So these are the two events that will carry us through August, and that somewhat lines up with the early part of September. And I'm really hoping that we see some news saying that around that time we will get Prism vs. Clash. I really don't want to hear that we're going to get Prism vs. Clash at the end of September. I am desperately trying to claw information out of someone so we know when these scenarios actually start so we can plan how we want to play through our next scenario or season. Are we going to go to Manibus if we were in Evolution's Call if we were in Manibus, and have enough time to complete that before Prism vs. Clash comes out because we don't want to, wait on Starcrum necessarily, or do we need to wait a couple weeks just to be able to get into Prism vs. Clash on day one? How is that going to work? That's what I really want to know. Now on to that balance pass and combat optimizations I was talking about. I want to go out of order and get these out of the way, then everything else is just general optimizations to finish out the video. So it says, we've noticed some balance issues during the novice season and we'll address them in the following sections. Starting with the cradle changes, first with Deadly Combo, it was after hitting a weak spot with bullet effects, bounce or shrapnel, bullet effect damage plus 25% for 3 seconds. Now it's after triggering bullet effects, so no weak spots anymore, with bounce and shrapnel, bullet effect damage plus 25 for 4 seconds. This is just an overall 25% buff now instead of just having to hit a weak spot. Hitting weak spots with shrapnel was very easy. Hitting weak spots with bounce was a little bit more difficult because it didn't play into the build as well. Now we have Transient Impact before, after triggering a power surge damage plus 25% for 3 seconds. Now it's after defeating an enemy, power surge damage plus 25% and shock elemental damage up 18% for 15 seconds. This allows it so that you actually have to try a little bit harder, and it kind of brings down all the power surge builds in its ability to do damage, because a lot of them were hitting very strong without much effort, and this is a way to combat that. Now, that was the offensive. We're going to the defensive. First is agility. It was before, after rolling, damage reduction plus 15% for 4 seconds. Now it's after rolling, weapon damage and status damage reduction plus 15% for 4 seconds. And why they're doing this is because damage reduction itself is a different statistic compared to weapon damage and status damage. So by making it more specific, it's making it a little bit weaker overall, probably based on what comes first in the damage reduction rules after damage is applied. On to Brawl Boost. Before, it was damage from humans minus 20%. Effect halved after defeating a human player. Now it's damage from humans minus 20%, just like before, but effect is halved after damaging a human player. So if you weren't in combat and you get the jump on you, it allows you to be more defensive compared to once you start attacking, it evens out. Instead, beforehand, you could get dropped on, then get a full fight, and then take out the person that did get the drop on you. When you're in PvP, getting a drop on someone is important. It's a tactical advantage, and you should be able to push that. I feel like people weren't feeling like that was available as much, and they were getting annoyed. They did change a passive on one of the armor unique pieces for Bullseye, because honestly, Bullseye is super strong, and it needs to be tuned down a little bit in general, and this is one of the ways they're doing it. So the old Huntsman boots were a boot that before said, after triggering the Bullseye, the next one bullet will count as a weak spot hit even if it doesn't hit the weak spot, and weak spot damage plus 30% to enemies affected by the Bullseye. So this essentially gave you free weak spots if you couldn't hit the weak spot and you had a high Bullseye application chance. Now it's after triggering the Bullseye, the next one bullet hitting a marked target will count as a weak spot hit. Everything else is the same. What this means is that if you kill someone, your next bullet will not be a weak spot hit on a new player or enemy in general, and that will allow you to have to ramp up your damage instead of just starting with high damage right off the start. And that is a very big change, because you had so much burst damage just starting a fight without really any benefit to the other players around you, and it didn't really accentuate the Bullseye build. It was just a passive that gave you more damage no matter if the target had the Bullseye on it or not. I'm actually interested in the fact that they made deviation passives too strong or too weak, and people have actually caught on to that because these are so hard to find. So there was Psychic Kid. Having this deviation fight alongside you grants Psi Intensity plus 5%, which is huge. Psi Intensity is your base damage. This is equivalent to what weapon damage is before you get your weapon damage percent modifier. Now what it's doing is having this deviation fight alongside you grants status damage plus 5%. So it's taking your Psi Intensity and using it in the multiplier that already exists, so it won't have as much of an effect. Next, we have health. Before syncing with this deviation grants max stamina plus 5. Now it grants max stamina plus 10. So this is a syncing, not a fight alongside you. So this is a passive buff just for having the deviation with you. This does make sense because when you use deer meat in a recipe, it gives you max stamina plus 10 already. But when you use rabbit meat, it's plus 40. So they're giving us many ways to increase our max stamina, and it's not the most important stat. So buffing this makes it so that you might be able to get an extra roll off and keep your Falcon set on the bonus from your Falcon set and stuff like that. They did the same thing with Run Fast. Beforehand, it only gave you a measly 3% movement speed. Now it's syncing grants a plus 5% movement speed. So that's actually a really cool buff. 2% movement speed is still something, and every percent of movement speed in my mind counts. It allows you to get to places easier, quicker, etc. Those are the three they changed. I wish we had more opportunities to see these drop because these are so rare. Just someone having one of these is like a god roll. It's very rare to find these. They made a pass at their melee weapons, which honestly is kind of weird because a lot of these don't even exist in a blueprint currently. I hope they do bring them out, such as the Scourge and the Fabled Masamune. But they fixed some things with the Scourge, Long Axe, Fabled Masamune, and also the Stun Baton. The Stun Baton is probably the easiest to talk about because it's just changing its windup of the attack so it attacks quicker, being a smaller weapon. On the Scourge beforehand, it had an attack multiplier increase based on the lost health of the player. Now it specifically says it's a melee damage increase based on lost health of the player. This makes it so it is specified and it doesn't increase your damage by a wild percentage. Instead, it just increases the base melee, it sounds like. So I could see you hitting really big numbers when you didn't mean to because of just that little modifier change. Next up is the Fabled Masamune, and this is a very intricate weapon. So let's just talk about it in general terms. Beforehand, it had a critical damage increase by 3% for 1% when the durability was over 60, but how many people found a durability of 100 Masamune? They never did. It was always in the 80s or 90s if you're lucky. Now what it does is if your durability is over 50, this ramp up starts, so it allows you to get more use out of the maximum of 120%, which would be at 90 durability compared to what it was beforehand where you would never even get close to that. They also reduced the attack by 2% for every 1 durability below 20. Beforehand, it was 1% for every durability below 40, so these thresholds are a little bit more paved out and you have a bigger window of neutrality, being from 50 to 20% compared to beforehand it being 60 to 40%. Everything else is virtually the same. The 30% attack multiplier has increased to 30% attack. So your multipliers will be affecting your attack greater than beforehand, it sounds like. So that's another thing to balance it out because the Masamune felt weak. The long axe was used in a way to increase crit rate very heavily. Beforehand, you could get up to 50% crit rate on any weapon for 10 seconds after your 5th swing and increase your melee swing speed by a little bit. Now it only stacks up to 3 times and it's 8% crit rate, but you get a lot more melee swing speed. So it's trying to focus on being a melee weapon instead of a buffer of all your weapons and more of a supportive stat stick type item. Stun Baton got another buff outside of its wind-up speed taking too long. Beforehand, light strikes and impacts had a 33% chance to inflict power surge, and then heavy strikes on targets with that power surge would inflict an additional 50% power surge damage in an AoE. Now, light strikes and impacts have an 80% chance, which is a huge number increase, and heavy strikes cause an AoE splash damage of 100% of their psi intensity to all nearby enemies. So overall, the Stun Baton is doing a lot more work than it was beforehand if you're in group environments. Next, I know people will hate it, but I honestly love it. The crossbow is getting some balance adjustments because it absolutely needs them. It is silly that it's the only support weapon in the game, and everyone was absolutely abusing it. Not only that, but it made crit and crit damage looks so much better compared to weak spot damage when you took a look at weapon damage builds. Not only that, it made any psi intensity build with critical psi intensity damage modifiers be excessively strong at the same time. So the changes with the recurve crossbow: before, on weak spot hit, you will inflict the bullseye on the target and all weapons will gain 30% critical rate against the target marked with the bullseye for 10 seconds. After the patch hit it will only give you 15% crit rate, which is still a huge amount, but it's much more fair for a 10-second buff, and it allows you to swap back and forth. What people were doing is they had such a high amount of crit rate, they were trying to one cycle a boss or an enemy within 10 seconds, so they never had to reapply the crossbow weak spot bullseye hit for another crit rate application. Hopefully this will dial it down, and especially in normal and hard mode scenarios in the future, the crossbow will be used specifically for weak spot builds as a supportive option for that build style almost exclusively. On top of that, people were using it with the mask modifier so that you ran a mask modifier not for your weapon specific damage but for the crossbow, so you got an additional added effect, which just made it super strong and unfair to a lot of people who wanted class specific builds. Now on to the legendary crossbow, the compound bow, or compound crossbow. Beforehand, it would give you a temporary boost of reload speed, some critical rate, and this effect could stack up to 3 times when hitting a target. After gaining max stacks, you could trigger unstable bomber when a target was hit. Now it's been reworked and is a lot stronger, which is great because we needed a good crossbow, and this might be a way to make it 100% be Jaw's secondary weapon specifically. Now, after hitting a target, reload speed plus 6% and crit rate plus 10%, stacking up to 3 times and lasting for 6 seconds. Defeating a target instantly maxes out the stacks. At max stacks, hitting a target also triggers an enhanced unstable bomber, which can also deal critical damage and causes the target to lose balance. 2 things it never had before. After each shot, unstable bombers damage multiplier plus 3%, stacking up to 6 times. If you miss, the stacks are halved. Every weak spot has a 40% chance to automatically reload 1 crossbow bolt. This is crazy. This is such a big buff to the compound bow that it really becomes a completely new weapon, and I'm excited for people making builds and seeing if its damage can actually be up to par with other weapons in the game. I really hope so, because if so, this is going to be a huge change and gives people more opportunities. And if people were bored with the Jaws, they can move over to the compound bow, or use the compound bow in instances where they actually want to use weak spots in a better light, or at least be able to hit weak spots from a further distance where the Jaws could not hit from. Speaking of the Jaws got a balance pass as well to up its performance, because it was underperforming. From the beta to now, it felt a lot worse, and it's one of the reasons why I did not want to play the gun, even though I like it a lot. Beforehand, one of the passes was after defeating an enemy, blast damage was increased by 30% for 12 seconds. Now, after a weak spot hit, blast damage is increased by 30% for 8 seconds. This means on bosses, you're doing 30% more damage with the Jaws. And also it pairs with a cradle enhancement that when you do hit a weak spot, your status damage is increased by an additional 25%. Even though almost every Jaws user does use the Fateful Strike, which takes away the ability to deal extra damage to weak spots, now they have a way to actually use weak spots to increase their overall status damage, which is a very nice thing for them to have. For the last weapon balance pass that we saw was the Doombringer. People were using the Doombringer more like a shotgun sniper than a shotgun, and with that, the trigger chance on the bullseye to hit was very high. They're bringing it down and trying to balance out the Doombringer in general by giving it a 30% chance to trigger the bullseye on hit, yet within 5 meters, so you had to be very close to the target, you have an 80% chance. So a lot of people were up in front in personal with the shotgun in general, and they probably wouldn't get hindered too much. But a lot of the time people were standing back behind cover and getting a lot of damage off before it was even really able to be reacted to in PvP situations. And in PvE situations, if you're just at a distance with a shotgun and being able to do as much damage as other weapons, that weapon is not operating correctly. I'm sorry, it isn't. You need to have some type of general form of each gun of how they use to make it feel like it is what it is, and people not getting confused with what the gun could be. If a shotgun operates like an assault rifle, well, it needs some changes, especially if a shotgun acts as a sniper rifle, which is the exact opposite spectrum. Finally, one more cradle change, but this isn't really because it was a cradle change, but because Great Ones are no longer considered deviants, they are considered bosses. So they made the cradle that having the deviation fight alongside you grants 50% extra damage against deviants. It is now grants 50% damage against bosses and elites. However, later on, and we're in hard mode, not sure exactly how this is going to play out just as Season 2, having the deviation fight alongside you grants 25% damage against bosses and elites, which feels like the most fair way to do it, because people were getting huge power spikes just by having a deviant that lasted a very, very long time, such as the Festering Gel was a good example of something that could last a long time out in combat. But the Polar Jelly and also Pyrodino lasts for an exceedingly long amount of time, and during that entire duration you would get a huge buff. Starry Studios also fixed some bug fixes with some of their weapons in the game, and armors too, such as one with Squidward's weapon damage bonus remained even after switching weapons, and I will admit I abused that a little bit. But also, Squidward didn't grant the damage bonus when hitting an ally with bounce, which caused other issues because there is a specific mod that allows us to do that, and it allows for functionality. Doyen's Cloak, which is a Frost Vortex build chest piece, applied double the damage bonuses after the frozen effect ended instead of just once, which made much bigger numbers than there needed to be. Some purple mods weren't working as intended. And here's an interesting one. Fixed an issue where reload speed bonuses from calibration blueprints, mod attributes, and set attributes caused reload speeds to exceed 100%, even though some of the mods say that they're supposed to increase it by 150%. So I'm kind of curious of their wording there. On to the next topic, new weapon calibration blueprint categories, which will be available starting in Season 2, but this is something that they added to these notes. Then on to the final thing before a slew of optimizations and fixes that we're going to talk about. In Season 2, they're going to be adding a new calibration blueprint categories. And really what this sounds like is they're making new weapon calibration attachments and also adding some suffixes to mods. First, they have the Frugal Style, which is a weapon calibration attachment, which is for pistols and sniper rifles, allowing for ammo recovery from missed shots. Then we have the Vanguard Style, suits SMGs, rifles, and LMGs, which is capable of having stabilizing keyword effects. Thirdly, we have the Boost Style, which is for pistols and shotguns, which is capable of increasing keyword trigger probability through reloading. That is absolutely insane, and I can't wait to see how that actually works on certain weapons. Like, that's really cool. Overflow Style, which suits pistols and LMGs, which is allowing for overloading magazines based on shooting frequency. I'm assuming the faster you shoot, the more you get ammunition-wise or magazine size-wise. However, I think this would be better for SMGs and LMGs, not so much pistols, but we'll see. Finally, we have the Energy Style, suits SMGs and rifles, allowing for ammo recovery after being hit, which means you're taking damage, you get some ammo recovery. Now, all these weapon calibration attachments or blueprints, depending on how they end up, will be obtained from disassembling gear or defeating super anomalies, which is something new to how we typically get these. We also have some upcoming mod suffixes. The first one is the Resonance suffix, which is increasing sustained damage output while dealing weak spot, crit, and elemental damage, which will be available on pants and gloves in the Prime War specifically, which is kind of weird. So that's a specific Prime War thing, even though most of us will be in Prism versus Clash instead of opting to do Prime War a second time. We have the Battle suffix, which increases weapon damage and status damage resistances in PvP, available on tops and shoes, which is redeemable in the Sproutlet shop, seemingly only in Evolution's Call, which is the current PvP scenario. Then they're adjusting the acquisition methods for keyword suffix mods. Keyword suffix mods will now be available through public crisis events, with their quality improving as the season progresses. So finally, what they have done is made PvP specific attachments to mods where only Prime Wars had that. I know a lot of people were complaining in my previous videos in the comments, even my last video in the comments, about how silly it is that PvE players get something special on their mods while PvP players do not. They get nothing. It's just standard behavior, and the PvE people seem to get the better cut of the deal. So I'm glad that they are making you branch out to try to get special mods for your gear. It seems like a very good thing for them to do. With that, they had some developer notes attached to this. Different scenarios provide different obtainable items due to gameplay differences, but each scenario should have its own unique drops. Thus, we provided mod suffixes tailored to the Evolution's Call and Manibus scenarios accordingly. Because of the high demand for versatile keyword suffix mods, we've moved their acquisition to public crisis events, thus allowing players from all scenarios to participate and obtain these mods. And on to the final stretch of this video, bug fixes and optimizations that are worthwhile talking about. There was about 30 bug fixes. There's only a few that were really relevant to people outside of, basic stuff they were fixing. One is fixed an issue where motorcycles would scrape and lose HP easily during sharp turns, which totally affected me. That's why I don't use motorcycles in the game. They would just break down as I was trying to make sharp turns. I mean, take my knee off or hurt my character before you hurt my motorcycle. That's real life for you, right? On top of that, they also fixed a huge issue in PvP servers in Evolution's Call scenario, where they fixed an issue where the Staroid Restrainer was placed in invalid areas during Stronghold Conquest. People were able to place that restrainer underneath water, in rocks, in cliffs where no one could get to them, attack them, or even try to win the round. So that's a big thing, and one of the worst things in the Evolution's Call scenario that people had to deal with. In optimizations, they increased the scan range of space-time, which is what happens when you press Q again, making it even easier to find chests and other items. Then they also optimized the vending machine, which allows you to have its own inventory, so when things are sold through your vending machine, they go into the backpack of the vending machine instead of your backpack directly. Then all you need to do is go to the vending machine storage space, pick up your stuff from there instead of it being directly deposited to yourself. Now the problem with the direct deposit is if you were looking for heavy items or things that weighed a lot, you could get so much at once where your character instantly became overburdened, unable to really walk or run, unable to jump or do anything. And if it was in middle of an intense area or part of the game, you would just end up dying or going down but not out, which is never a fun thing to happen. So a very good optimization there. They optimized Eternal Land a little bit further, where if your amount of goods would overflow Eternal Land's backpack, which I could see it potentially happening, everything would go into a temporary backpack, which will store all your items for 7 days. And then after that point, unclaimed items would be deleted from your character or just converted into astral sand. So you do have 7 days to fix the problem of you having too much stuff. So actually logging in after the settlement phase is over and when your server gets deleted where everything moves to Eternal Land is a very smart idea to keep all your stuff in tip-top condition and make sure you don't lose anything that you really want to keep. They integrated some new social functions and optimized some functions that were in the game for that. They made an events channel, which essentially means when joining any sort of event, you would automatically switch to it for real-time voice chat with allies in your area. Also, after forming a team in-game, voice chat would automatically be switched to the team channel instead of the open world channel. Those two are probably the biggest points of this. Yet, they added two other cool things in the chat. They are allowing for a translation feature for chats within your UI, and also added a sharing feature to the deviation, mimetic specialization, weapon crafting, and mod refining interfaces, which allows player to generate posters for sharing with others or saving locally. So they're adding more stuff that they can do, and they kind of took a little bit from Final Fantasy, I feel, where you can translate in the game if you're having to deal with multiple languages and you actually wanted to interact with people that might be speaking in a different language. I think that's a really cool function to have in any game like this. They finally made the interaction key for whispers H instead of F, which is why I had whispers off entirely, because if I want to open a chest and I get a whisper, I don't care what the whisper says. I'm annoyed at whispers. And I think enough people showed that sentiment about just turning whispers off entirely when it was supposed to be a concept within their game that they wanted to really have be there, that they just kind of said, fine, you can have a different hotkey for whispers, which I am so glad we now have. For some vehicle optimizations, pretty run-of-the-mill. However, now you can dismiss vehicles not owned by yourself while they are in your territory. If someone parks their vehicle in your territory, you can say, get the hell out of here, you don't belong here, you don't get to park on my property. So that's something cool that they added. They also added a new guidance optimization, which essentially allows Mitsuko to appear to guide the player the way they want to. I think a lot of people will be turning this off, but for those who have problems with tasks and general things that they need to do, this might be able to help you when you're close enough to that task area to let you know, hey, you might just want to veer off to the side and do this real quick, get your quest done, and then move on with your day. For the survival gameplay side of things, they added an auto flashlight feature that activates in dark areas. However, this will cause brightness issues to occur because of quick brightness changes. Some people don't like that for whatever reason, and they can turn the setting off so that it doesn't affect them. Also, they decided to tell us that dish formulas gained from recipes picked up in the wilderness will now carry over across seasons, so players won't need to reobtain them, which I thought we already knew, so I'm kind of curious why they're saying it again. And this is really a character optimization than a survival optimization, yet if you are in a reduced speed mode, like low hydration, fractures, stuff like that, you can now sprint at a reduced speed just in case you really need to move a little bit faster. So they're giving away on that and not making everyone just walk at snail's pace. They also fixed some things with deviations, one being that fixed an issue where some deviations wouldn't attack test dummies. I'd say almost every deviation wouldn't attack test dummies, so I'm curious exactly what they fixed there. It'll be really nice being able to get proper dummy numbers with your deviation out, so you can show a field of burst damage windows to your standard damage windows. They are introducing new traits for deviations in Season 2. The following deviations now have a chance to gain those new traits, which are the Extra Dimensional Cat, the Digby Boy, Grow Shroom, Fetch-a-Lot Bunny, Butterfly's Emissary, and Festering Gel. So we have combat deviants, we have gathering deviants, and just in general territory deviants. So that's actually really cool to see. I want to see more deviant traits and make it so that tier 3 deviant traits aren't literally impossible to find. I haven't found one through the entire season, and I've got a lot of deviants so far. They also reduced deviation's PvP damage factor to prevent certain deviants from instantly killing players. We're looking at you, Xenopurifier. You're the player killer, we all know it. They have some deviant optimizations, which are really a head start look at what's going to be happening in the second season. It says, starting from the second season, the opposing factions shall face a new challenge, the Super Anomaly. Due to perpetual exposure to aberrant forces, the enemies of the continent have gained new powers and extreme resilience. Luckily, they also come with new weaknesses. Exploit these vulnerabilities and defeat them to earn rewards. The location will be larger strongholds in hard and pro dungeons. Super anomaly types will be void, phase, balance, and coherence. Countermeasures for these super anomalies will be specific types of damage or abilities obtained from the cradle. Okay, enough of the super anomaly stuff. I just saw that was really interesting and I missed it earlier. I just wanted to stick it in the video and put a tag on it. Now, back to normal deviant optimizations. They slightly increased the HP of low and mid-level deviants in the novice season. Deviants in the novice season now pose a larger threat and deal more damage. Now, great ones, being something slightly different than deviants, and now actually different than deviants. So Ravenous Hunter, Treant, Araxium, Shadowhound, and the Forsaken Giant are no longer considered deviants and cannot be affected by damage bonuses that apply to deviants. Instead, they are only affected by the effects that apply to great ones. They optimized the blast radius and warning indicator of vulture bombers. They improved the alertness and attack logics of maniacs and gnawers on higher difficulties. And they fixed issues where deviant corpses would still have hitboxes, causing them to obstruct the player's shots. That last thing that I just said, where deviant corpses would have hitboxes, that meant all deviant corpses. So if you had one big deviant fall in front of the thing that you had to shoot, you could no longer shoot it, and it was a pain in the butt, really and honestly. So I'm very glad that they're fixing that too. On to some territory construction optimizations. We are getting a new grid alignment system that displays a grid map on your territory. Grid alignment mode allows you to place foundations and facilities on the foundation or floor more neatly. The rotation angles are fixed at a 45-degree angle while in that mode. Foundations can be raised or lowered by half a wall height while in grid alignment mode as well. Such a godsend of a thing that they should have had earlier. Now we don't have to do all this hokey stuff to make walls be a half wall taller as the foundation. A lot of things are going to be much nicer with this, and I hope we can align everything with this, not just foundations and other snapping items, but items that really can't snap, like planter boxes, just to say one. They also have some general gameplay optimizations. Starting with the Prime War, they've reduced the timer of the Prime War to 5 minutes, I'm assuming for all of them. It used to be that easies were a 10-minute, hards were a 20-minute, pros I think were also 20-minute, and the nightmares were 30 minutes. Maybe the original was 5 minutes, but there's a lot of weird timers and they didn't really make any sense. In Prime Wars, they added a new time limit for demolishing buildings and facilities in the Prime War. After the time limit is up, buildings may be demolished by other metas. Materials used will be returned to the original meta that built it, although. So this allows us to actually clean up the field, which we haven't been able to do in Prime Wars, and I'm glad that they found a good way to do this without it being something that could be considered griefing or otherwise. But just putting a 48 or 72 hour timer on these things to allow anyone to delete them is really, really good. I'm glad that they figured that out. However, to go along with that, they added a new protection mechanism that prevents all buildings from being demolished by other metas once the boss phase of the Prime War begins. So once the boss is out and you're in the Prime War, you no longer get to delete anything you want to. What's there is there until after you're done. They also added an on-screen display of the durability of the Staroid facilities in the Prime War, so you know how close to failure you might actually be after a major attack if you did survive it. In Territory Purification and Workshop Defense, they reduced Deviant HP across the board and also the damage they deal to buildings in base defense modes. Then for PvP, if a meta is defeated while carrying a Chaotic Cortex, that Chaotic Cortex will no longer drop as Stardust Flowers, but as its own Chaotic Cortex model so that other PvP metas can go and pick it up and use it themselves. And with that, I think we covered mostly everything that we need to talk about in these patch notes. Yes, I know, don't get me wrong, it's almost been an hour and there's a lot of stuff going on, but I feel like this is a really good way to allow people to be able to listen in on the patch notes and get an idea of what's to come without reading through a huge block of text. And I mean huge. What was put out on these patches are always a massive endeavor to go through. And I know for a fact, and I'm one of these people, reading the patch notes sucks. If someone just regurgitated all the information to me and told me outright, I'd be a much happier person at the end of the day, especially if they allowed themselves to explain things like I'm trying to do so that you understand parts of these a little bit better, because I feel like most of this is probably translated and then once-overed and we're not getting everything word for word. So having a little bit extra extrapolation on the explanations I feel does help a lot as well. As always, if you have any comments, questions, or curiosities about what's going on in one of my videos, just leave a comment down below and let me know. I will be happy to answer, or someone else will get to you. I try to answer almost everything I can in the comments so that people have their questions answered and they're not as confused as they were coming into it. I know when new information hits the board to anyone, as myself included, sometimes it adds more confusion than solving the confusion I already had. So I get it. Feel free to leave a comment. No hard feelings. If it's a stupid question, it's something that you didn't know, I don't care. I'm going to answer it either way. And I will say it once again. I want Starry Studios to let us know when new content will be dropping. I want to know when Prism versus Clash launches, because if I'm stuck in a scenario for 6 weeks and it comes out 5 weeks in, I want to do the new content. I don't want to be fussing around for a week while other people might potentially be in that content having fun and seeing all the new stuff. A timeline will be super helpful, not just by month but by day when approaching events occur, and really they should tell us 6+ weeks out, and that's because that's how long most of these phases will last, and you do not necessarily want to be stuck in a phase while new content comes out, especially if other people are going to be able to play it before you. I like being the explorer in games, so if someone else is doing that and I can't be part of that, I feel a little bit let down. I don't know if that's the same with you guys, if you have a similar effect, but that's something that I really enjoy doing. I like being the pioneer and going through, exploring and finding out new stuff. That's my jam. Anywho, thank you for listening. Thank you so much if you lasted an entire hour through my spiel on all this stuff. I will catch you later in the next video. Thank you for watching.